If you're listening to my story today, you might think $20 isn't enough to change a life. I used to believe that too. Until the day I gave my last $20 to a complete stranger. And 3 days later, a lawyer told me I had inherited $18 million. No, I wasn't related to him. I had never even heard his name before. And what I discovered afterward was worth far more than the money. My name is Emily Carter. I'm 29 years old, and 3 years ago I was living in a tiny apartment in Portland, Oregon. Life wasn't exactly falling apart, but it wasn't going well either. I worked as a waitress at a small family-owned diner called Maple Street Cafe. The pay barely covered my rent. Most months, I had to choose between groceries and paying another bill. My old Honda had nearly 200,000 miles on it. The heater barely worked. The check engine light had been on for almost 6 months. Still, every morning I smiled. Not because life was easy, because my mother always told me, kindness costs nothing. She passed away 5 years earlier, but those words never left me. One cold Thursday evening, rain poured across downtown Portland. Business had been slow all day. When my shift ended, I counted the cash in my purse. $23. That was everything I had until payday. I needed gas. I needed groceries. And my electricity bill was already overdue. As I walked toward my car, I noticed an elderly man sitting alone beneath a broken bus stop shelter. His clothes were clean, but soaked from the rain. He wasn't holding a sign. He wasn't asking anyone for money. People simply walked past him, pretending he wasn't there. Something about him felt different. He looked lost, not homeless, just alone. I almost kept walking. Then I remembered my mother's voice. Kindness costs nothing. I sighed, walked across the street, and held out the only $20 bill I had. I'm sorry it isn't more. The old man looked at the money, but didn't take it. Instead, he looked directly into my eyes. There was something strangely familiar about his smile. Finally, he accepted the bill. Then he quietly asked, "Why would you help someone you've never met?" I smiled. Because maybe one day, I'll need someone to help me. He nodded slowly, as if that answer meant more to him than the money itself. Then he reached into his coat pocket, pulled out an old silver coin, and placed it in my hand. I've carried this for 40 years. I think it belongs to you now. I tried to hand it back. I can't take this. He gently closed my fingers around it. Keep it. One day, you'll understand. Before I could ask what he meant, a black luxury SUV pulled up beside the curb. A man in a tailored suit stepped out holding an umbrella. Mr. Whitmore, we've been looking everywhere. The old man smiled at me one last time. Thank you, Emily. I froze. I had never told him my name. As the SUV drove away, I stood there in the rain, holding an old silver coin in one hand and $3 lonely in the other. I had no idea. That moment had just changed my life forever. For the rest of the night, I couldn't stop thinking about him. How did he know my name? I replayed every second of that conversation in my mind. Had I accidentally told him? No. I was certain I hadn't. Maybe the man in the suit knew me. Maybe they'd seen my name on my work badge. That had to be it. It was the only explanation that made sense. The next morning, I stopped by a coffee shop before work. The cashier smiled. That'll be $5.80. I reached into my purse. $3. The old silver coin. And nothing else. I smiled awkwardly. I guess I'll skip the coffee today. As I turned to leave, the woman behind me said, I've got it. I looked back. She was probably in her 60s. Kind eyes. A warm smile. You looked like you needed it more than I do. I laughed. Thank you. As I walked out carrying the coffee, I couldn't help smiling. Maybe my mother had been right. Kindness had a strange way of finding its way back. By lunchtime, I'd almost forgotten about the old man. Until my phone rang. Is this Emily Carter? Yes. My name is Daniel Brooks. I'm an attorney with Brooks and Whitmore Law. I'd like to meet with you. I frowned. I think you have the wrong person. I don't believe I do. This concerns Mr. Charles Whitmore. The name immediately sounded familiar. Then I remembered. The man from the SUV. My heartbeat quickened. I'm sorry, but I don't know anyone named Charles Whitmore. I understand. Could you meet me this afternoon? It won't take long. Something about his voice felt serious. almost urgent. Against my better judgment, I agreed. At exactly 3 o'clock, I arrived at Brooks and Whitmore. The office overlooked the Willamette River. Everything inside looked expensive. Marble floors, crystal lights, original paintings. I felt completely out of place. A receptionist greeted me. "Miss Carter, Mr. Brooks is expecting you." She led me into a large conference room. A tall man in his 40s stood as I entered. "Emily, thank you for coming." He motioned for me to sit. "I'll get straight to the point." He slid a folder across the table. "This morning, Mr. Charles Whitmore passed away peacefully." I felt my stomach sink. "The man from yesterday?" Daniel nodded. "I'm afraid so." For a moment, neither of us spoke. "I only met him for 5 minutes." "I know, which is why what I'm about to tell you will probably sound impossible." He opened the folder. Inside was a copy of a will. "I'll read the relevant section." He adjusted his glasses. "To Emily Carter, the young woman who reminded me that kindness still exists. I leave $18 million. I also leave my lake house in Cannon Beach, my collection of rare books, and one request." Daniel slowly closed the document. The room became completely silent. I stared at him. "I'm sorry. I think you just said $18 million. I did. I laughed. Not because it was funny, because it was impossible. This has to be some kind of mistake. I serve coffee all week. I live paycheck to paycheck. I don't even know this man." Daniel calmly slid another photograph across the table. It showed me, standing in the rain, handing Charles Whitmore my last $20. Someone had taken the picture from inside the SUV. "He knew exactly who you were." I looked at the photograph, then back at Daniel. "Why me?" Before he could answer, the conference room door suddenly slammed open. A furious woman in a designer suit stormed inside. She pointed directly at me. "So, you're the waitress who stole my father's fortune." I looked at the woman in complete disbelief. "I'm sorry. I think you've mistaken me for someone else." She laughed. A cold, bitter laugh. "No. I know exactly who you are. The waitress. The girl who manipulated my father." Daniel immediately stood up. "Victoria, that's enough." She ignored him. "My father spent 30 years building Whitmore Industries. And somehow, he leaves everything to a complete stranger." She stepped closer. "You planned this. I don't know what game you're playing, but it's over." I felt my face burn. "I met your father for less than 5 minutes. I gave him $20. That's all." Victoria smiled sarcastically. "Convenient." Daniel's voice became firm. "Miss Whitmore, if you continue harassing my client, I'll ask security to escort you out." She stared at me one last time, then pointed a finger. "This isn't over. You'll regret taking what belongs to my family." The door slammed shut behind her. The room became silent again. I looked at Daniel. What just happened? He slowly sat down. Charles Whitmore had only one child, Victoria. They hadn't spoken in almost 6 years. Why? Daniel hesitated. Because she cared more about his money than his life. He opened another folder. "There are things you should know." He handed me a newspaper clipping. The headline read, "Tech billionaire donates half his fortune to children's hospitals." I looked up. That was him. Daniel smiled. He quietly donated hundreds of millions of dollars. But he never wanted publicity. I kept reading. Another article. Another charity. Another scholarship. The more I read, the more I realized the old man in the rain wasn't just wealthy. He had spent his entire life helping strangers. "So," I asked quietly, "why did $20 matter so much?" Daniel leaned back in his chair. "Because it wasn't about the money. It was a test." I frowned. A test. For the last 8 months, Charles traveled across Oregon, dressed like an ordinary old man. He wanted to know if kindness still existed. He met thousands of people. Some ignored him. Some insulted him. One man even stole his wallet. My heart sank. And then, Daniel smiled. "He met you." I looked down at my hands. I almost walked away. "But you didn't. You gave him the last $20 you had. Did he know it was my last 20? Daniel nodded. "The driver watched you count your money before you crossed the street. He knew exactly what you were sacrificing." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. So, he left me $18 million because I gave him 20. Daniel shook his head. No, he left it to you because you proved something no one else could. What? That kindness still exists, even when life isn't kind to you. Tears filled my eyes. Just then, Daniel placed one final envelope on the table. My client asked that you open this alone. Across the front, written in elegant handwriting, were 7 simple words. For Emily, before you accept my gift, asterisk asterisk. I stared at the envelope. Something told me the inheritance wasn't the biggest secret Charles Whitmore had left behind. I didn't open the envelope right away. For some reason, it felt heavier than it should have. Daniel stood up. I'll give you some privacy. As the door closed behind him, the room became completely silent. I slowly broke the seal. Inside, there was a handwritten letter and a small brass key. The letter began, Dear Emily, if you're reading this, then I've already left this world. First, I don't want you to feel guilty for accepting what I've left behind. You didn't earn this money by giving me $20. You earned it long before we ever met. You just didn't know I was watching. I stopped reading. Watching me. I turned the page. 8 months ago, I walked into Maple Street Cafe for the first time. You were serving tables. You didn't recognize me, which was exactly what I wanted. I searched my memory. An elderly man, always sitting alone by the window, ordering tomato soup, black coffee, reading a different book every week. My eyes widened. It had been him. The letter continued. I visited your cafe 23 times. Every visit, I watched how you treated people. Not just customers. Everyone. I felt chills run down my arms. I watched you buy breakfast for a homeless veteran. I watched you stay an hour after your shift ended, helping a new waitress who was struggling. I watched you pay for a little boy's meal, after his mother realized she'd forgotten her wallet. You never knew anyone was watching. That's why I knew your kindness was real. A tear rolled onto the paper. I had forgotten most of those moments. He hadn't. Then the letter took an unexpected turn. But none of those moments are why I chose you. The real reason is hidden inside the box that belongs to this key. I looked at the small brass key. It had a tag attached. Deposit Box 417. First National Bank of Oregon. Charles continued. Inside that box, you'll find the truth my family has spent 30 years trying to bury. If Victoria discovers what's inside before you do, everything I've built will disappear. My heart began racing. What truth? Another page. Please, don't trust anyone until you've opened the box. Not even my attorney. There are people willing to do anything to keep that secret hidden. I swallowed hard. Suddenly, this wasn't just about an inheritance anymore. I folded the letter, slipped the key into my purse, and walked out of the conference room. Daniel was waiting in the hallway. Everything all right? I forced a smile. I think so. He nodded. I'll have someone drive you home. Before I could answer, the receptionist hurried toward us. Mr. Brooks, there's a problem. What is it? She lowered her voice. Someone broke into Miss Carter's apartment this afternoon. Every color drained from my face. What? The police are there now. They said nothing valuable appears to be missing. Daniel frowned. Then what were they looking for? The receptionist looked directly at me. They tore the entire apartment apart, but they only searched one thing. What? Your purse. My heart nearly stopped. The only thing inside my purse was the brass key to Deposit Box 417. Someone already knew it existed, and they were willing to break into my home to get it. I looked down at my purse. The brass key was still inside. Whoever broke into my apartment had been just a few hours too late. Daniel immediately pulled out his phone. I'm calling the police detective handling the case. I grabbed his arm. No. He looked surprised. If someone was searching for this key, calling everyone into the middle of it might be exactly what they want. He studied me for a moment, then slowly nodded. Charles would have liked you. I forced a weak smile. I'm not so sure. 30 minutes later, I unlocked the door to my apartment, or what was left of it. Every drawer had been emptied. My mattress had been sliced open. Books covered the floor. Picture frames were shattered. Even the kitchen cabinets had been ripped apart. The police officer taking photographs walked toward me. They knew exactly what they were looking for. What makes you say that? They ignored your television. Your laptop. Even the cash in your kitchen drawer. He pointed toward my bedroom. They searched every place someone might hide a document, or a key. A key. They knew. I thanked the officer, but I didn't tell him about Deposit Box 417. Something deep inside told me Charles had trusted the right person. The next morning, I drove to First National Bank of Oregon. I parked 2 blocks away, then looked in my rearview mirror. A black SUV, parked across the street. Its engine was running. Maybe it was nothing. Maybe I was imagining things. Still, I waited. 5 minutes. The SUV didn't move. I got out of my car, walked toward the bank, then suddenly crossed the street into a bookstore instead. From the front window, I watched. Less than 30 seconds later, the black SUV slowly pulled away, following the direction it thought I had gone. Someone really was watching me. I waited another 10 minutes, then slipped out the bookstore's back exit, circled the block, and entered the bank through a side entrance. A manager greeted me. "Good morning. How may I help you?" I quietly placed the brass key on the counter. "I need access to Deposit Box 417. He examined the key. His expression immediately changed. "One moment, please." He disappeared into a back office. When he returned, he wasn't alone. An elderly woman in a navy blue suit walked beside him. "I'm Rebecca Lawson. I'm the bank president." She smiled politely. "We've been expecting you." I frowned. "Expecting me?" She nodded. "Mr. Whitmore left very specific instructions. If anyone other than Emily Carter presented this key, we were to contact the FBI immediately." My heart skipped a beat. "And because it's you," she smiled warmly, "I'll personally escort you." We walked through 2 security doors, down a long hallway. Finally, she unlocked a private vault. Hundreds of safety deposit boxes lined the walls. She stopped in front of number 417. "This is yours." My hands trembled as I inserted the key. The lock clicked. Inside, there wasn't jewelry. There wasn't cash. There was only one large brown envelope. Across the front, written in Charles Whitmore's handwriting, were 8 words. "Open only if you want the whole truth." I slowly opened the envelope. Inside was a thick stack of documents, a flash drive, and one old photograph. The photograph showed a much younger Charles Whitmore, standing beside another man. I recognized him instantly. My heart stopped. It was my father. My father had died in a construction accident 12 years ago. At least, that's what I believed my entire life. I turned the photograph over. Written on the back were 7 words that made my blood run cold. "Your father never died, Emily." At that exact moment, the vault lights suddenly went out. Everything around me went completely dark. Darkness. Complete darkness. For a split second, no one moved. Then the emergency lights flickered on. A deep red glow filled the vault. Rebecca grabbed my arm. "Stay behind me." Someone had cut the main power. A loud alarm suddenly echoed through the bank. Rebecca reached for her phone. "No signal. What is happening?" She looked around nervously. "This vault has its own emergency generator. It should have started by now." That meant only one thing. Someone knew exactly how this building worked. Footsteps. Slow, heavy footsteps echoed from the hallway. Someone was coming. Rebecca whispered, "Close the deposit box." I quickly shoved the photograph, the flash drive, and the documents back into the envelope. Just as the footsteps stopped outside the vault, a man's voice called out, "Bank security." Rebecca didn't answer. Instead, she quietly shook her head, then whispered, "Our security team never announces themselves." My heartbeat exploded. Whoever was outside was lying. The handle slowly turned, locked. For a moment, silence. Then, bang. Someone slammed into the steel door. Again, bang. Rebecca grabbed a heavy metal emergency bar leaning against the wall. "If they get in, run." I stared at her. "What about you?" She smiled. "I'm 68. You still have a future." Another crash. The door shook violently. Then, just as suddenly, everything stopped. Silence. A few seconds later, the emergency lights turned off, then back on. The regular lights returned. The alarm stopped. Someone shouted from outside, "Rebecca! This is Portland Police. We've secured the building." Rebecca slowly unlocked the vault. 2 police officers rushed inside. The hallway was empty. No intruders. No broken doors. Nothing. One officer looked confused. The back emergency exit was forced to open. They escaped before we got here. I looked down at the envelope still clutched against my chest. If we'd opened that door 30 seconds earlier, they would have taken everything. Rebecca quietly looked at me. Charles knew this would happen. I nodded. He wasn't protecting money. He was protecting whatever is inside these papers. That afternoon, Daniel met me at the bank. We drove straight to his private office, locked every door, closed every blind. Only then did we finally examine the contents. The first document was a birth certificate, not mine. A little boy named Noah Whitmore. Date of birth, March 18th, 1996. I looked at Daniel. I don't understand. He frowned. Charles never had a son. Only Victoria. We opened the next folder. Hospital records. Adoption paperwork. Private investigator reports. Then, one sealed envelope marked, "Read last." I opened it. Inside was another handwritten letter. "Emily, if you've reached this point, then someone has already tried to stop you. The truth is simple. Victoria is not my greatest mistake. My greatest mistake was trusting the wrong business partner. 28 years ago, my closest friend disappeared after discovering financial crimes inside Whitmore Industries. That friend was your father." My hands froze. Daniel leaned closer. "No." The letter continued. "Everyone believes your father died in a construction accident. He didn't. His death was staged. The people responsible needed him to disappear forever. Only 2 people knew the truth. Me, and the man who helped him escape. I could barely breathe. My father. Alive. Then why had he never come home?" I turned the page. Charles had written only one final instruction. "If you truly want answers, go to Harbor Point Lighthouse. Tomorrow morning. Exactly 8 a.m. Come alone. Someone has been waiting for you." For 12 years. I slowly lowered the letter. The room fell silent. Daniel looked at me. "What are you going to do?" I looked at the old photograph again, then at the address Charles had written. "I've spent my whole life believing my father died. If there's even a 1% chance he's alive, I have to know." The next morning, before sunrise, I drove toward Harbor Point Lighthouse. The ocean waves crashed against the rocks below. The parking lot was completely empty, except for one old blue pickup truck. I stepped out. The cold wind hit my face. Then I heard a voice behind me. Soft, shaking, almost afraid to speak. "Emily!" I slowly turned around. An older man stood there. Gray hair, weathered face, tears streaming down his cheeks. He smiled through the tears and whispered the words I'd dreamed of hearing since I was a little girl. "I've waited 12 years to hug my daughter. I didn't need another photograph. I didn't need another DNA test. Somehow, I already knew. It was my father."